that really cemented my relationship with the Jewish community. When I came back from Israel, I was literally a different person. I got it. Every day I was there, I felt a light bulb going off over my head, and I understood.
Welcome back to Jewish. We have a very important episode today, and I'm joined by Director of Community Security at Jewish Federation of Northern New Jersey, Tim Torrell, who's going to talk to us today about what's going on in the community and how we can deal with the challenges we're dealing with. Tim, welcome.
Thank you. It is really an honor to be here with you today. I've seen the other people you've interviewed since these podcasts started, and I know it's a high bar, so I'll try to hit the mark.
Well, you're very kind, and I know you said that you're a bit of a mush like me, and so I'm going to do my best to bring out the mush in you. And I say it because the last thing I think most of us who know you in your security capacity think about is mush. You are as tough as nails. You have been a godsend to the Jewish community in the work that you've done for Jewish Federation. But I mean, that covers the synagogues. I know my synagogue, it covers every Jewish institution. And it's really what you've done. It lifts all of us up. It gives us comfort and security in a really insecure world. So it's an honor to have you on. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I have to say, yes, I am a bit of a mush. My wife knows this. My friends know this, and I'm glad to see the tissues there. Hopefully, I won't embarrass myself, and I won't need them. But I did see your podcast with Ravit, and it was very emotional. And I was right there with you, brother, when you got a little emotional. So I understand it. And I also want to just say at the onset that Tim is here today, and I'm here to talk about what I do for Jewish Federation and our community at large. But there's a big team behind me. I have a deputy director, Stu Conboy, who is a retired police officer as well. He is super important in so many ways. We have a grants facilitator here at Federation, which is a huge part of our work. I interact on a daily basis with our JCRC director, David Barkey. So it's really a team behind security. It's just not Tim, but thank you.
That's a very good point. But you're a great leader, and it was an honor to work with you for 2 years as chair and really see in detail the work and the threats and challenges we're facing. But before we get into really what the environment we're facing, how we're combating it, how you're approaching it, I want everyone to hear a bit about your background, which is pretty remarkable. Tell us how you began in law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, I told this story recently when I received the Cherish Award earlier this year, which I was very honored to receive, by the way. I grew up in Brooklyn, East Flatbush, and as I grew in age, the neighborhood kind of grew a little dangerous. And at a very young age, I was the victim of an armed robbery or a holdup on the way to school one day. Back then, kids walked to grammar school, and nobody thought about it at all. Now it's different, much different, obviously. But on the way to school, I was held up and robbed at gunpoint. And I remember when I got to the school and told the teachers there, they called NYPD. NYPD eventually came, and they took a report from me. And I remember when I was giving my story to the police, and I remember the cop walking in, and to this day, I don't remember what he looked like. All I saw was from the neck down. I saw his gun. I saw his badge, like I had said on a previous appearance. And I saw the uniform. And by the time he was done with me and interviewing me, I went from being a mess to having a gun stuck in my face, basically, to being real calm, and I felt like somebody cared, and I said, I want to do that. And from a very young age, I knew I wanted to be a cop. So I went through school with that in mind. When I graduated high school, I had every intention of taking every police test I could get my hands on, and I did. I took TNEC, I took Englewood, I took the Port Authority, and in the meantime, I was a truck driver for the Teamsters in New York City in the theater district, driving a garbage truck, a big roll-off truck. But in any event, I took a test, and I passed, and I became, I'm going to really date myself here, but I took that test back in 1978, and the Englewood Police Department had an auxiliary police program, which I became a part of.
Well, what is an auxiliary police
It basically
department?
back then was you were a volunteer cop without a gun, but you were the eyes and ears of the police. Very similar to what Chavrim and Shomrim do nowadays. But I was a volunteer cop, and if I saw something, I reported it to the regular officers who were on duty. So I did that for 2 years, and it was kind of stepping stone to a regular full-time paid position. And that led me to me passing the test and becoming an Englewood cop. And I started in 1980. So I spent 42 years in law enforcement with the same police department until I came here.
And so, okay, so 1980, 42 years, and I'm sure you've seen a tremendous amount. What through that led you to the Jewish community?
Oh, boy. A lot of things, but I guess the one incident that stands out in my mind was for the first 15 years or so of being a cop, I was in the patrol division. I was the uniform cop. I walked the beat. I rode a motorcycle for a while, which was pretty cool. Back then, Chips was popular,
Amazing.
right?
You
Remember
really
that show?
fit the perfect character profile.
Yeah, I
for
loved
Chips.
it. I got to be honest with you. I fed into it.
Was it a Harley?
It was a Harley,
Sweet.
yeah. Loved it, had a great time doing it. But I was also your regular cop who drove around in a police car. And I had made a lot of good arrests and had been involved with a lot of cases. I actually got thrown into the middle of a homicide case very early in my career. And a few years into being in the patrol division, they started asking me, hey, are you interested in becoming a detective? And I never wanted to become a detective at that point in the career. I loved the patrol work. I loved the uniform work. But having been involved in a homicide case while I was in uniform, I really kind of got a taste of it, and I wanted to eventually become a detective. So when I was asked, I said yes. And one of the first cases I got was a case that involved the theft of numerous Torah scrolls from a synagogue in Englewood. At the time, it was Temple Emanu-El. And they eventually moved to Closter, same synagogue.
My synagogue.
Your synagogue, which
Yeah.
is kind of ironic, right,
Yeah.
Daniel? So I got the case, and there wasn't much chance to solve it. There was no DNA back then. We're talking about the mid-'90s.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't any DNA. There were no video cameras anybody can go through. It was just good old-fashioned police work. But in my investigation, I had found out that stealing Torahs was a thing in New York City, and NYPD had a good track record of solving these crimes. So I sought out the NYPD for assistance, and they actually inducted me into what's called the Torah Task Force. And I was the first Jersey cop to ever become a part of NYPD's Torah Task Force. So I worked the case with them. They gave me a lot of advice, a lot of assistance, and we were all over the place, Daniel. We were up in Muncie. We were in Teaneck. We were in the Bowery in Lower Manhattan, in Pickle Barrel Alley, in places where you might be able to get some tips on who stole these Torah scrolls, because once you steal them, you have to get rid of them, right? There's got to be a value to them. So somebody's got to get rid of them. So eventually, to make a very long story short.
Over how long of a period?
I'd say several months.
Okay.
And I actually had a desk in Manhattan North Precinct.
And were you spending 50% of your time on this, 20%? How much of your time were you spending?
100%.
100%.
I was
It's an
dedicated
incredible
to just-
dedication. not just by you, but also by, Englewood to have their detective entirely focused on the recovery of these Torahs.
Yeah, well, to Englewood's credit, they realized what a blow it was to the Jewish community to have Torah scrolls stolen. Yeah. It's right. We all know it's the central part of a synagogue.
So after several months, what happened?
So after several months, the case got a lot of media, and one night I got a call out of the blue from a woman who lives in Bergen County who gave me a tip. And it was a Friday night, I'll never forget. And the detectives I worked with over in New York, I called them up, and they were both heading out for a long weekend and said, guys, I just got this tip. We got to move on this. So we ended up going to an apartment in the Upper West Side. And again, I'm shortening the story, but we recovered the Torah scrolls, and it led to setting up the individual who had stolen them. We commandeered a Judaica store in Midtown Manhattan, and we went undercover, and we had an NYPD detective that acted as the Judaica store owner and started bargaining with the individual who stole the Torah scrolls. We ended up getting them back, arresting him.
This is unbelievable. It was
it got worldwide
TV show.
attention. It really did. It got worldwide attention. I was doing interviews for months after that, and the team of detectives that I work with. But we were pretty famous for a short while. But during the course of that investigation, I really became very close with a lot of Jewish community members in Englewood and beyond, in our tri-state area, if you will. And I think that was the beginning of my love affair with the Jewish community. Mm. And I was then the go-to guy after the case broke, and they realized that we recovered the scrolls. They threw a big party for us, which is custom to welcome back the scrolls into the
I can't even imagine the scene of the welcoming back the scrolls.
Oh.
It was an incredibly moving moment, I imagine.
Well, talk about mush, Daniel. I went through a lot of tissues because people were so amazing. They were so kind. They were just so genuinely appreciative, and it was a very emotional case. It was a very emotional outcome, and that's what drew me to work closely with the Jewish community.
And I mean, I imagine it's relatively unusual to be successful in these type of cases, and I'm sure in a lot of cases there's got to be a lot of frustration as a detective to spend years trying to get to a solution. So this getting to a positive outcome has got to be tremendous.
Oh, it was amazing. It was a shot in the dark. I think my boss, who assigned the case to me, give it to the new kid, the new detective, see what he can do. I don't think he thought we had much of a chance of solving it. But again, the team that I was part of, it wasn't just Tim. The team that I was part of, we were very passionate about it. We learned what the Torah scrolls meant, and we took it real serious, and it paid off. And yeah.
Well, I just have this vivid image of you all in a Judaica store on the Upper West Side. Yeah, what a scene. That's incredible.
I was hiding under a box as the bad guy came in to do.
Did he bring the Torahs with him?
He brought one with him and had the other ones at another location.
Wow. And was he working as part of a group, or was it an individual?
No, he was alone, which is a whole different story. But the guy was actually, he actually spoke some Hebrew. He was from New York City, and he was not Jewish, but he understood the value that the scrolls had, and it was a crime of opportunity.
It was just purely financial driven.
It was. He had friends at Englewood, and he had passed by. He was a burglar at heart, and was passing by the synagogue and said, "Hey, they don't have great security there. I can get in there." And knew a little bit about the Jewish community.
So now that's mid-90s, progressing forward in are there any other kind of cases that jumped out at you, in your career? And I think about the fire bombings. Were you involved in the fire bombings?
I wasn't intimately involved, but I was obviously a cop at the time, and I often worked with the prosecutor's office in these task forces that were formed for burglars or other types of crimes.
Yeah.
So I was aware of the investigation, and every once in a while I would get a call from some of the detectives that were involved in that case asking for advice. But yeah, that was a big case.
So what as you progressed through the 90s into the 2000s, and I'm kind of building to what the security environment is. I'm interested in how you saw the 2010 periods security-wise. Was it a relatively stable environment? What was the world like from your perspective, whether it's Jewish or non-Jewish related?
Well, really, as far as crime went, crime to me definitely was on the rise. I mean, it really it began in the 80s when crack hit some of our big communities. Well, really hit all the communities, and that had an impact on crime, even in sleepy Bergen County. But as I moved up the ranks in the police department, I started to wear more hats, and one of the jobs that I got was being the supervisor of all bias crime investigations. So whenever there was a crime against a protected class of society, whether it was the LGBTQ community, whether it was the African American community, whether it was the Jewish community, the Korean community, the case would come to me, and I would basically run the investigation or assign people to it. Unfortunately, as those years progressed, the victims of bias crimes were more than likely the Jewish community. So I found myself just constantly working these type of cases and seeing little by little every year anti-Semitism growing and growing.
So you were sensing it growing. And
100%.
So here's a question. As you're overseeing bias crimes, I imagine there's an incident. They call, the Englewood police, they put you on it, and you go and meet with the person who's been who's been a victim of that bias crime. Did you reflect while you were meeting with those families that you were now the police officer that you had met with when you were a kid, and now you were coming to that? And what was that like, to feel like being the person who's there to comfort and help solve their problems?
You literally read my mind, what I was just thinking. Whenever I would get a crime like that, I would often think back of that incident I was involved with when I was a kid and how that cop made me feel. And then when I got on the job, one of the officers that broke me in gave me the best advice I ever got in my entire career, which was, put yourself in the shoes of whoever you're talking to at the time. If it's a bad guy, think about what the bad guy is thinking when you're interviewing them, trying to get a confession, trying to talk to them, trying to get details out of them. Same with victims. Don't ever lose sight that this is probably one of the most important things that is occurring in their life or has ever occurred in their life, and it's traumatic for them. Don't just be a cop taking a report and treating them like a victim. Think of them, put yourself in their shoes, and that's what I did.
Well, I think it's one of the greatest pieces of advice for everybody, and you couple that with your empathy, and you're a highly empathetic person. And I was actually talking to my son about this the other day. It's very easy to think about what your view is. Think about the other person's view. And we really struggle, I think, in this world, and not well beyond being Jewish, but we all, so many people get locked into their perspective. And it's so important in everything we do to look at the other perspective. The people feel just as strongly as one may feel on the other side. So let's try to understand, what is their lived experience. Why are they thinking this way? And let's try to understand that. So anti-Semitism, as you're seeing it, feels like it's picking up. Was it numerically picking up in the 2010 period?
Oh, absolutely. It definitely was. And the feel was different. And my work in dealing with bias crimes against the Jewish community, ironically, brought me even closer to that community when in 2016 Federation asked me to be a part of a law enforcement delegation that they were sending to Israel. Now, I had never been to Israel. I had heard 100 things about Israel, and I had a lot of misconceptions about the country. And when they asked me to go, I couldn't say yes fast enough. I was super excited. And how ironic is it that I end up working for Federation, right? But they asked me to participate in this delegation.
How many people went as part
there was about 8 of us, and it
Great.
was police executives and paramedics. And of course, we got over there and we worked with Ravit. It was the first time I met Ravit. Wow. Like you, I instantly fell in love with her. She was just absolutely amazing, and went all over the country and learned so much, not only about Judaism, but the religious historical sites. I was born and raised a Catholic, and it was very interesting for me to go to sites like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. Yeah. But it was super emotional, and that really cemented my relationship with the Jewish community. When I came back from Israel, I was literally a different person. I got it. Every day I was there, I felt a light bulb going off over my head, and I understood.
See, now I'm going to get emotional because if I think about Jewish Federation's work, like I think what you're highlighting is like some of the most non-public, that is, Federation doesn't put it forward publicly, but absolutely essential work to be able to bring law enforcement and paramedics to Israel to understand what's actually going on there is so important because, well, I would say, and I'd be interested if you agree with this, the number one thing that I always take away is that there really are people who are hell-bent on not just destroying Israel, but killing Jews and killing anybody that helps them kill a Jew. And you really can see the massive effort and money that is spent by those forces, whether it's the Iranian regime or their various proxies. I don't know if that was part of the feeling you had in 2016.
Oh, again, you're right on the money. To illustrate exactly what you just said, one of the things that we did during that delegation was to go down into the tunnels in the north, just north of Nahariya, right by the Lebanon border. And I remember we went down into this tunnel with the IDF, who gave us a tour of a tunnel that tourists didn't see. But this tunnel was miles and miles long. They had been working for years to pop up into a neighborhood. I believe it was by that restaurant that you love, Sheffy's, in the north. But they had been working for years to pop up into a community in Englewood and do an October 7th. Yeah. And the IDF and I guess some other secret organizations, 10, 15 feet from popping up, that's when they discovered the tunnel. That's how close it came. That made a huge impact on me, so much that when I became the director here, one of the first things I wanted to do was start those law enforcement delegation trips up again. And in 2023, ironically, just months before October 7th, I brought a delegation of about a dozen chiefs from integral towns, important towns in our community,
Well, and beyond North Jersey.
and beyond North Jersey.
It was throughout, like, the most senior law enforcement officials really throughout the state you brought with
Well,
you.
it was primarily focused, that one was primarily focused with, we cover Bergen, Passaic, and Hudson.
Yeah.
So it was police executives from those areas.
Well, but one of them, I'm thinking of the one who might be the most, formal, like senior. He may be based here, but also spent a lot of time in Trenton. And he was, I don't know, he had some very official title when I remember meeting him.
Yeah, but the point was that we who we chose for the trip was intentional.
Yeah.
We thought it out, for a long time before we decided to go. And I saw when I brought them over, one of the heartwarming things for me to do was to see the same light bulbs that went off over my head go off over their head as we toured the country.
Well, and you'll remember we had in September of 2023 the major gifts dinner for Federation and had those law enforcement officials come as the speakers to describe their experience, which is exactly, this is a month, of course, before October 7th or weeks before October 7th.
Right.
And it was exactly as you're describing, the light bulb going off, like, oh my God, these tunnels are extremely complex. They're extremely well built, and they're meant to do deadly harm. And this helps us understand, the significance of what we're facing, not just in Israel, but also here, because we should not be mistaken that people from that region are coming here potentially to do harm.
Oh, if you saw what I saw on the intelligence reports that I see almost on a daily basis, it keeps me up at night sometimes. I thought I was all done with that, Daniel, when I retired from law enforcement.
Well, so we're going to get there because we're on a nice chronological order here. So weeks later, we have October 7th, and I'm very interested in your perspective on the day of our, Saturday, October 7th, on October 8th, 9th, 10th, in the immediate days and moments when you saw what was happening in Israel, what was going on, not just in your head, but what, without giving too much detail, was going on from a security standpoint as you oversee really the Jewish communities in northern New Jersey's security apparatus.
Yeah, boy, that day, like for all of us, was just unbelievable. In fact, on the morning of October 7th, I was in Vermont. I'm a big mountain biking, snowboarding guy.
Nice.
And one of my favorite places to go is Vermont. It's my home away from home. It's a beautiful state.
Beautiful time of year to be up there.
Beautiful time of year to be up there. And I remember I was just getting up, making myself a little something to eat and getting ready to go out onto the trails, and my phone started going off like crazy. And I've got to just, if you'll allow me, let me back up just a little bit, because I started in this role with Federation in October, December of 2021. Mm-hmm. And 2 years prior to, obviously, October 7th. And I had, right off the bat, I had been involved in a couple of crazy investigations that involved people who had been radicalized coming to this country and looking to do harm to the Jewish community that we serve.
I didn't realize that.
And a lot of it I can't talk about, but I knew, I had this feeling something bad was coming. And not that other people weren't thinking the same. I'm sure they were. But I was to get back to October 7th, I was getting ready and my phone started going off. And we had just got up there several hours before that. And I slowly started to realize the impact. And some of my counterparts, the Tims in other areas of the country, were in Israel doing a law enforcement delegation at the time. Mm. And I was communicating with him as much as possible under the circumstances. And they were hiding out in the stairways of hotels that they were in. And I was getting firsthand accounts of what was going on. And, of course, people here work with Nahariya, we were hearing what was going on, and I've got to tell you, I don't think I got much sleep in the first 3 weeks. I was working 20-hour days. I was on the phone with rabbis until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Some nights, executive directors, other leadership in the Jewish community, our own leadership. It was, God bless my wife, because she was so patient with me.
God bless you. God bless you and
Well,
your wife and everyone who supports you for doing what you did, because, the terror and the horror of what happened in Israel and the terror of what could happen here. I mean, it was crazy. It truly it's beyond comprehension. And I think it's, and the security, it's beyond comprehension. There's the emotional element, but then there's also like, you have a job to do.
Right.
And that's actually like making sure we're organized and we're coordinating with law enforcement across 100 organizations to make sure they're secure. And so what you're talking to the rabbis, but then on the relationship side with respect to your counterparts in law enforcement, tell me about what you're in communication with them to the extent you can.
My phone was nonstop with law enforcement calling me, because I having been in law enforcement for so long in our area, a lot of people knew me, and some of the people that actually were in chief that became police chiefs in our community were guys that I helped train and work with.
Wait, that you broke in.
Broke in.
Yeah,
so,
I love this. You
so
broke
they were
people in.
calling me saying, Tim, and I was like, listen, I'm getting videos that the general public is not seeing, which are horrific. And I'm sure there are people in the Jewish community that are getting those same videos. So when your officers are dealing with the Jewish community, please keep that in mind, that this is a life-altering event for the Jewish world in history in general.
Well, and I really just appreciate that and the sensitivity to which you bring that, because I think there were, and when I hear this is like, inherited trauma, which I don't want to use too much of that type of words, but the reality is like and I remember September 11th in the days and weeks and months. And like, I watched as kids, I mean, I was 24 years old, just like me, were jumping out of buildings. And I know I've talked about it here before, but in like thinking, just feeling so much identification, it was very similar on October 7th and 8th and 9th. And like, this is like, I mean, we've been to Israel. We've spent months of time in Israel. These are our brothers and sisters. How do we know this isn't going to happen in our own community here? Like, are we safe? Are we safe in our synagogues? Are we safe? And that was the immediate, I think, reaction of so many people is like, should we be putting signs out, or should we have our mezuzahs on our door, or, our Star of David necklaces? And, that I know that continues those concerns, which we'll get to. But I mean, I appreciate your, pointing that out to law enforcement, but not only the sensitivity, but then the action plan, because I know within day, I think it was Tuesday, the 10th, 9th or 7th, 8th, I think it was the 10th, we had a huge community event at the Kaplan JCC, which was a whole security situation. We had several thousand people there. And I mean, that's in short order. Tell me, how you're responding to all of this with law enforcement, making sure we're having proper staffing at the services, at synagogues, the various elected officials who are coming to synagogues to be supportive. How are you kind of looking at all of that?
So listen, one of the opening slides on our training, on our active shooter training, I talk about how it is my job and our job in Jewish communal security to empower and not to frighten. And I understand that there was a lot of people that were just absolutely scared to death because of what happened on October 7th. And I was always very attuned to warm and welcoming, how we don't want to make our synagogues, our day schools, our other agencies like Fort Knox. We have to, it's a balance. Yeah, I can make a place totally impenetrable, but then you lose something. You lose that feeling of community. So you have to make people feel safe, but you have to be honest with them. And approaching security measures after October 7th for that event that you talked about was, my gray hairs increased a lot after October 7th. I can tell you that. There were a lot of concerns, but to law enforcement's credit, we are so lucky to live in the area that we live in. Yeah, we get tired of the traffic on Route 4 or the traffic on Route 23. Yeah, we get tired of all that, and sometimes it feels like we live on top of each other. But the emergency services that we have in our area, they're the best. I really, not to put down any other police department, NYPD is great, LAPD, but we have a special relationship with law enforcement here, and they were so attuned to what was going on and constantly seeking out my advice. And they understood, especially those guys that I brought to Israel, they really understood, yeah, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the Jewish community.
Well, and the gravity of the situation and the fact that there's, there's these groups of people who will stop at nothing to kill Jewish people and anyone else that is in the way. And, that's a reality. And we are so fortunate to have you and your relationships with your former colleagues. And you mentioned the training you do, which, I think about various incidents around the country. And it is your counterparts at other federations that have saved lives in those communities through the various trainings. So maybe you want to touch on the work that you do at Jewish Federation with various organizations, so people know they should be reaching out to you so that we're empowering, whether it's the trainings, whether it's the security reviews, et cetera.
Yeah. So, wow, there's so many things I want to say about that. So many aspects of that. What I'll say is this, is the training that we provide literally has saved lives. The same training courses that we give to our facilities and our organizations here have saved lives in Colleyville, Texas with Rabbi Charlie. Yep. Saved lives in the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh. And most recently, West Bloomfield. I mean, there could have been so many deaths that day. And they were saved, the children in West Bloomfield were saved because of the very training that their local security directors gave them. I was astounded when I started this job in 2021 of the network that is in this country. And there was only a few dozen Tims when I first started back in 2021. And now there are hundreds of me all over the country, and we all talk. We are not siloed off from each other, and the Jewish community needs to sleep really good at night knowing that. And many people in the community might be surprised to hear about the depth and breadth of our Jewish communal security network, but it is extensive. We have experienced analysts that have worked for three-letter agencies in the FBI or the DEA that work for our New Jersey Jewish Security Operations Center. We have one of those, and we are constantly in communication with every other state throughout the country and every other area. But the big part of our program is to do those trainings and give those trainings that really save lives while not scaring people to death.
Well, it's as you said, empowering. And so I really wanted anybody to know they should be absolutely encouraging, if not insisting, that their various agencies are working with you and the team, because it is like we all need to make sure that we have the protocols in place, not to scare anybody, but rather to empower everybody to know we have put ourselves in the absolute best position possible to protect everyone who comes into our various facilities. And I know, that's the work that you and your team are doing, which I'll say one other thing, the security reviews, which have been extremely valuable at various organizations I'm involved with, which is where you or your team go around to see where the soft spots are. And that's an important element of what I think services provided.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to. A lot of times, people in my field, we tend to talk about doom and gloom a lot, right? And yeah, it's been terrible since October 7th. But I've got to be honest with you. I am more optimistic now than I've ever been since October 7th, because 5 years ago, there were few trainings. Now everybody's doing them several times a year. There was few grants out there. Now there's millions of dollars invested for the Jewish community to protect their brick and mortars, so to speak, and the community in general. The trainings, like I said, have just gone through the roof, and that's all a good thing. So I'm extremely optimistic and not fearful at all. And one thing I've learned, like I mentioned again when I received the Cherish Award, was the one word that always pops up with me with the Jewish community is resilience. I saw it when Ravit spoke to you in her podcast. Resilience, resilience, resilience. Everything that's thrown at the Jewish community, we handle, they handle. And that's part of our job, is to help these communities stay resilient, stay safe, and where people feel safe, that's when they feel like they belong, right? And that's our goal. It's not to scare, but I'm so optimistic of what I'm seeing from our leadership in our facilities and from law enforcement.
I totally agree, and that's exactly why I in a way am not. I'm kind of cutting it at October 7th in our linear progression, because it is very easy, and I think a lot of people, for good reason, a lot of it's brain and chemical, latch onto the really scary stuff and the bad stuff, and we can go through each week the things that are happening here or there. But I agree with you. I think, and I know because of the work that we've done together, some of the stuff that you see and some of the threats that are out there, and I have more confidence than I've ever had in the work that you're doing, the work that the team's doing, the work that the global Jewish community is doing, the U.S. community. I mean, we are fighting and protecting against a group of people who really, have a mission. And as you said, and I firmly believe, we are a resilient people and we're a hopeful people. Yeah. And I think that is really what's allowed us to sustain for the thousands of years that we have, is that light that we bring to the world. And I think you are part of that light. You bring hope and joy and love to so many people. And the Cherish Award is highly representative, which you received, as you said, of who you are and what you are to our Jewish community, but beyond the Jewish community, what you are to your family and what you are to this world. And I think, and I'll go back and we'll end on this, because you have people to save, and you really are like Superman, and the work you've done. But I go back to that I guess in my head, that school and that meeting. And my feeling is you were 9 years old. How old were you?
About that, yeah.
I just have a 9-year-old boy sitting there. Yeah. And to have you now in the position that you're in for all of us, it's one of the great gifts that Hashem has given this Jewish community, God has given this Jewish community, and this world, is Tim Torrell. Tim, thank you so much for spending time with me today and with all of us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.